There's a particular kind of man you've probably noticed. He doesn't need a crowd. He's not loud about his opinions. He'll spend a Saturday afternoon in silence and call it a perfect day. And he has a cat. Not just tolerates one. Genuinely, deeply loves one. Most people shrug at this. He's a cat guy, they say, like it's a personality quirk, something slightly odd, slightly soft, slightly hard to explain. Psychology says it's none of those things, because the men who love cats aren't just choosing a pet. They're revealing something precise about how they're wired, how they connect, how they protect themselves, and what kind of intimacy actually works for them. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what's going on inside these men and why a man who loves a cat might be one of the most emotionally intelligent people in the room. This type of man exists everywhere. He shows up in art history, in literature, in your office, in your family. He's the writer who works at 2 a.m. He's the engineer who thinks for 20 minutes before he speaks. He's the man who seems detached at a party but has the most interesting conversation you've had all year if you catch him one-on-one. He doesn't announce himself, but if you pay attention, there's a cat somewhere nearby. Researchers in personality psychology have been studying the connection between pet preference and personality for decades. What they've found isn't random. Dog people and cat people score differently, consistently, measurably differently on key psychological traits. We're going to go through 7 of them. 7 psychological reasons why certain men bond deeply with cats. Not as a list of fun facts, but as a real map of how these men work. Let's start with the one that surprises almost everyone. Number 1. They value relationships that respect autonomy. For these men, love without pressure isn't a compromise, it's a requirement. Cats, famously, don't perform affection on demand. They come to you when they choose. They sit with you when they want to, not because you called them. And for certain men, that dynamic doesn't feel cold. It feels right. Personality researchers call this a high need for autonomy, a core trait in introversion and in people who score high in openness to experience. Psychologist Edward Deci, whose decades of research produced self-determination theory, found that people with strong autonomy needs don't just want freedom for themselves, they want it reflected in their relationships. They're drawn to connections where neither party is controlled. A cat models exactly that. And a man who loves that arrangement often brings the same respect to his human relationships, a refusal to cling, a comfort with space, a belief that real connection doesn't require constant contact. He isn't emotionally distant, he's emotionally principled. But that's only the surface. What's happening inside is even more interesting. Number 2, they are highly sensitive to overstimulation. These men don't just prefer quiet. Their nervous systems genuinely need it. Psychologist Elaine Aron's research on highly sensitive people, roughly 20% of the population, found that a significant subset of men experience sensory and emotional input more intensely than most. Loud environments drain them faster. Social performance exhausts them at a neurological level. After extended time with people, they don't just want quiet, they need it to function. Dogs are wonderful creatures, but they are high-energy animals. They need walks, games, noise, activity. They respond to you loudly and constantly. For a man whose nervous system is already running at high volume, that dynamic compounds the pressure rather than relieving it. A cat moves quietly. It doesn't interrupt. It doesn't demand. It provides companionship without adding stimulation, which for this type of man is the most restorative thing in the world. He doesn't love cats because he's antisocial. He loves cats because they give him peace without asking him to perform. Now here's where it gets a little more complicated because this is the part most people get wrong. Number 3, they express care through presence, not performance. The men who love cats are often deeply caring people. You just might not recognize it right away. That's because they express care quietly. Not through grand gestures, not through constant verbal affirmation, through consistent, reliable presence, showing up, staying close, taking care of small things without being asked. Psychologist John Gottman's research on lasting relationships identified what he called bids for connection, small moments where one partner reaches toward the other. People who build strong bonds aren't necessarily the loudest or most expressive. They're the ones who respond to small bids, who notice quietly, who stay. A cat runs entirely on this same language. It approaches slowly. It sits near you, not on top of you. It gives you a slow blink, what animal behaviorists call a cat kiss, and that single gesture says everything. These men don't just understand that language. They speak it fluently. And this next one, most people in relationships with these men get it completely wrong. Number 4, they have a high tolerance for emotional independence in others. If you've ever loved one of these men and felt confused by how little he seemed to need from you, this is what's actually happening. These men don't just tolerate emotional independence in themselves, they're actively comfortable with it in others. They don't interpret silence as rejection, they don't read distance as withdrawal. They can sit in the same room as someone they love, both doing completely separate things, and feel deeply connected. Attachment researchers call this a secure, autonomous attachment style individuals who value closeness but don't require constant reassurance to feel it. They don't become anxious when a partner needs space. They don't become distant when a partner needs closeness. They can hold both. A cat forces you to practice this every single day. You can't make it come to you. You have to trust that it will. And these men, perhaps because of their own nature, make peace with that early and carry it into every relationship they have. If you're the kind of person who thinks carefully about the people in your life, really thinks, not just reacts, and you're still here, that tells me something about you. It would mean a lot if you hit subscribe. We put out videos like this every week, real psychology, explained in a way that actually makes sense. Number 5, they have a high need for perceived safety and intimacy. Here's the part that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. Many of the men who love cats carry some level of wariness around emotional exposure. Not damage wariness, a carefully cultivated instinct that says, don't be too open too fast with too many people. This isn't a wound. In many cases, it's intelligence. Developmental psychologist Mary Ainsworth's foundational research on attachment showed that some individuals, particularly those raised in unpredictable or emotionally volatile environments, develop a heightened sensitivity to relationship safety. They don't withhold themselves because they don't care. They withhold themselves because being truly known by someone carries real risk, and they've learned to move carefully. A cat earns trust the same way these men give it, slowly, on its own terms, through repeated small moments rather than sudden declarations. When a reserved cat finally chooses to sleep on a man's chest, that gesture matters precisely because it wasn't guaranteed. These men understand that. They've lived it. But this is the root underneath all of it. Number 6, they are drawn to authenticity over performance. At the core of almost everything described so far is one psychological through line. These men are drawn to what is real, and they are exhausted by what is performed. Carl Jung wrote about the persona, the social mask we wear to meet the world's expectations. Jung believed that the healthiest psychological development involved becoming aware of the mask and learning to live closer to the self beneath it. Men who love cats often have a fine-tuned sensitivity to inauthenticity. They can feel it in a conversation. They can feel it in a room. They find social performance draining not because they're antisocial, but because something in them keeps asking, is any of this real? A cat doesn't perform. It doesn't pretend to like you. It doesn't smile when it doesn't mean it. When it shows you affection, that affection is unambiguous because cats have no social incentive to fake it. For a man who has spent a lifetime developing a radar for what's genuine, that is not a small thing. That is everything. Which brings us to the last one, and honestly, the most important. Number 7. Their relationship with a cat is a window into how they love. Everything this man brings to the cat, patience, respect for boundaries, quiet care, the willingness to earn trust rather than demand, it is what he brings to every relationship he values. Researchers in anthrozoology, the study of human-animal relationships, have found that the way people interact with animals is a remarkably reliable predictor of how they interact with people. Not perfectly, but consistently. The man who waits for the cat to come to him is the man who waits for you to be ready. The man who interprets the cat's need for space as normal, not personal, is the man who won't make your need for space a problem. The man who notices a cat's small signals, the slow blink, the turned head, the quiet purr, is the man who notices yours. He loves quietly. He loves patiently. He loves in a way that is so understated it can be easy to miss. But once you learn to see it, it's unmistakable. So the next time you meet a man who loves his cat, really loves it, you know what you're actually looking at. You're looking at someone who respects autonomy because he needs it himself. Someone whose nervous system runs deep and who has learned what restores him. Someone who speaks in quiet acts of care because that was always his native language. He isn't cold. He isn't closed off. He isn't unable to love. He's someone who loves precisely, who gives his trust to the things and people that have earned it, and who understands, better than most, that real connection is never forced. It's built. Slowly, through presence and patience, and showing up the same way, again and again, without being asked. The cat didn't choose him randomly, and neither will the people who are right for him. If this made you think about someone in your life or yourself, I put together a video on why introverted men love so deeply and so quietly. It goes even further into the psychology behind how these men bond. It's right here when you're ready.